Cheers.
Cheers, man.
What are you
What is
drinking,
your
Sean?
beverage tonight?
Iced tea.
Okay. I have water. Again.
Quality H2O. Sean's staying hydrated, training for his half. He's ready for it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm ready for it. My 7 this morning was so easy, except it just always I feel great during it, but then like at the end it just like an hour or two later I need a nap. No matter when I run.
You gotta eat more.
I mean, I'm eating, but I also like there's the balance between like you can eat so much and then you have to nap because you ate too much, and then like you don't eat enough and you got to nap because
You
you're
need more
tired and
energy.
hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
All right. So today's episode was a listener request. Today we
hmm
are covering hippos, but not just
the
hippos. We are going to debate whether or not hippos would be a good food source. And that's because back in
or
1910, they said it almost happened. I immediately thought this was the greatest thing ever, and Sean hated it.
well, because Colin left out an important detail that it was a partial alternative to cows.
Yeah, it was an
Yeah,
alternative to cows.
everybody is falling out of their seats right now. They can't believe that it would be replacing cows.
They can't believe that anybody would stick with cows. All
Yeah.
right, let's
Okay.
get into it.
Okay.
We already know that hippos are super important to today's culture. All right. You know the movie Madagascar, right? Boom.
I've never heard of that one.
Oh, get out of here. Fantasia, another super fantastic. Hippos, super important. Everybody knows a dancing hippo. Then we have the hippopotamus song, Hippo, I know. Then comes POT. Yeah. And I want a hippopotamus for Christmas. So clearly, hippos have been underlying in society for a while now. But
I don't know why people like them, like in pop culture. I don't know what the deal is around that.
dude, like, what are you talking about? They're so awesome.
Well,
I
like Madagascar and Fantasia, I don't know about those examples because there's so many other animals in them.
dude, you mention Fantasia to anybody, and they're gonna know about the hippos and the tutus. All right, it's guaranteed, guaranteed.
Yeah, they'll think about that, but they're gonna think about Mickey Mouse though, mainly.
All right, everybody has their own opinion, Sean.
That's why we're having this conversation because our opinions are different.
So after doing some research on this, I literally became very, very into hippos. I read 3 books on hippos and listened to a bunch of podcasts about hippos. So I got to say, I'm pro hippo. I got some fun facts for us. They are like a dwindling population, and that's mostly due to their being poached, like hunted, and their environment being destroyed. And the people are poaching them and eating them, by the way. Just keep that in your cap for later.
Or selling the ivory.
And they're selling their teeth as well. So they come from the Greek name for water horse. They can, in groups, they're called a bloat, a pod, or a siege. The groups can be up to 200. A hippo can weigh up to like 8,000, 9,000 pounds. Fastest leg speed, 32 miles an hour. Skin is nearly bulletproof. It can't swim, but it can hold its breath underwater for up to 5 minutes.
That's kind of ironic too. This animal.
Yeah, because
it can't swim, but it lives in the water.
Basically lives in the water. We'll get into its hydration issues later. It does need to stay hydrated.
I already see flaws in this animal's existence. That's all
man.
I'm saying with that fact.
Closest relatives are pigs, which is one of our main food sources, or whales and dolphins.
Nobody orders pork chops at a steakhouse for a reason.
But you do have pork chops. And people do order whale at a steakhouse, all right? Go to Iceland.
What?
Yes, go to Iceland. PETA's going to hate me, but I ate whale in Iceland.
Was it good?
Yeah, dude, it was fantastic.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. All right. So there are two types of hippos. There's like the large common and the pygmy hippo, and the pygmy hippo we'll touch on a little bit later. All right, Sean, you ready for story time?
Oh yeah, I'm ready. Hit me with it.
All right, so basically the overall story of this is back in 1910 there was a food crisis, and the plan was to import hippos into Louisiana swamplands. Right?
Mm-hmm.
They have very little fat, and they high yield in protein, roughly 1,200 pounds of meat per an average sized hippo. All right.
I didn't know that they were low in fat.
Yeah, they're like high in I think it's unsaturated fats. So you actually, if you were to cook them, just saying, you wouldn't have to worry about it sticking to the pan. So it was all the way up to the Congress. Like, it was very much a thought, because in Louisiana there's this thing called the water hyacinth, and it was polluting the Mississippi River, and fish were dying. So it was proposed as sort of a win-win in Congress as, hey, we can give you this lake cow bacon, and it'll solve our water hyacinth issue, and it'll give us a solve to the meat crisis that's going on in America. Ready for this? This is the crazy part. And from here on, it's going to sound like fiction, but this is, again, a true story. And it's a story of two spies. So Frederick Russell Burnham was a frontiersman and he was in the colonial African wars. He is considered a man's man. He is the inspiration for the Boy Scouts as well as Indiana Jones. So, as a famed scout, he could live on his own in the woods. During the wars, he was a spy cutting off supply lines and gathering secret intel. Nicknamed the King of the Scouts, because he'd be able to push himself beyond the limit. So he would go days without eating, as well as he could even slow his own heartbeat. So he's the David Blaine of nature right now. This guy is sharp as a tack. During so he had a bunch of stories, as you can imagine. So he was talking to people, telling them a story about some crazy time during the war or when he was growing up. And the crowd was like, oh, like they were so enthralled with him. And he turns and he goes, I'll get the snake later when I'm done. And everybody was like, what are you talking about? And they pointed over there. He was like, there's a snake behind us. And they were like, oh. This man is described as half jackrabbit, half wolf, a man totally without fear. How does he sound to you, Sean?
Sounds like an okay guy.
Sounds like a guy I could get behind anything he puts forward, right?
Sounds like a guy that might be a little bit off his rocker too if he's going a couple days without eating.
All right,
just
Sean.
Putting that out there. I know what side of the argument this guy's on. That's also why I'm saying that.
He's mentally strong. Dude, if you can survive starvation, you're definitely a total badass.
He is definitely mentally strong.
All right, let's get a little bit more into how crazy cool this guy is. When he was 2 years old, his house was getting attacked by like Native Americans, and his mom stashed him away in corn huts, like shucked corn. And like he was hiding in there. And then she ran away. She comes back the next morning. The house is completely burnt down. But he is still waiting in the corn husk. He didn't move all night. At like 13 or 14, he became a delivery boy. And he was riding horses. And you know how typically like people get tired, they'll stop. Well, he would keep riding and switch horses and keep going throughout the night so he could travel along faster. Eventually, I think his parents passed away. Not 100% sure on that. But he started living with some other family. He ended up running away from them because he didn't like the lifestyle that they were living, and ended up getting trained in scouting by a man named Holmes. Yeah. And then
that's straight out of a movie.
Oh, right? It's like wild. And then while he was on his like expeditions in like the wild, in order to make sure that he wouldn't be like making fires or anything that would like attract people, or so he could stay kind of incognito, he would eat this cake that was made of like powdered jerky, like deer jerky, and flour, and then he would bake it into a loaf, and then he would survive off that by like 1 pound a day. It kind of reminds me of like the elven food from Lord of the Rings. I don't know. Sounds too good to be true.
Sounds kind of gross, but like I see that it's effective. I get
Dude,
it.
it's got all the the needs, the nutritional stuff that you need. That's sick.
Sort of. Sort of. It's like protein and carbs.
Yeah. He would
No,
also
like
survive on ox blood and milk.
I don't understand the ox blood at all.
I think it adds the protein. Maybe it's just a thing to show that he's a total badass. Like, yeah, I'll drink ox blood and I'll mix it with milk to give it some more like death.
Maybe he wasn't human. Like part like random ox type vampire or something. I don't know.
An ox, like a chupacabra.
What?
The goat suckers, a chupacabra. You've never heard of a chupacabra?
I've heard of it. I just don't know what it is.
They're like the goat suckers. Oh, we'll get into that another time, but that is a whole other like cryptozoology thing that we can get into. So while he was growing up, he decided he always wanted to go to Africa. So he decided to follow his dreams and help out in the Boer War. Ton of stuff happened here. None of it has to do with hippos, so we're going to skip it. But if you want to, there's a great article online called American Hippopotamus. I think it's a book as well. Great story, goes through everything. I'm just going to give the highlights of it. Basically, he was the chief of scouts for England and South Africa. He was cutting off supply lines, being a spy. His main opposite side, there were two men. One was known as the Black Panther of the Veld, and this was Fritz Duquesne. This guy is a little bit of a mystery. It was said that he came up with his tactics from watching a panther stalk his prey. So he was described as the human epitome of sin and deception. Walking, living, breathing, searing, killing, destroying torch of hate. Not exactly the same as Frederick Burnham. Described a little bit differently. So throughout the war, they were tasked to kill each other. Burnham eventually left the war due to an injury and didn't return because he had like family matters going on. He had a kid. But he was friends with Teddy Roosevelt, and Teddy Roosevelt loved the ideas of the hippopotamus ranching, and he actually told newspapers of his approval. So when the idea was originally like shot out, it was described as pitched as transplanting African animals. The goal was to solve the meat crisis in 1910. There wasn't enough land for cows to graze on, which was the main issue. And it was so bad that people started thinking about eating dogs, right? Now, Sean, that's a little much for me.
Do you think that this guy, since he was living in Africa for a while, you think he had ownership over a bunch of hippos?
No way, dude. They're definitely wild.
No way.
He didn't own a hippo ranch there. I think they were just wild animals.
Maybe he was very aware of their whereabouts and could facilitate sales.
Well, yeah, for sure. He could definitely. There was definitely a profit to be made for him. He was very familiar with the African outback, and he could do pretty much anything in the area. I mean, that dude could survive like alone in the wilderness for days on end. All right, so they were free range. The idea was free range hippos in Florida, Louisiana, and Mississippi. That would solve the problem. The biggest hurdle was that people said they were assuming that people wouldn't want to eat them.
Yeah.
Which I've looked up how it would taste, man. Depending on how you cook it, it could taste like pork. It could taste like brisket. It could taste like steak. There's so many different options. You can put it in stew. Taste is not an argument anybody can have against the hippopotamus.
When we compare it to steak, though, there is, I mean, it's good. Steak is good, you know. The thing, if you're saying like like a nice hippo fillet or something versus ground beef, from the bottom shelf of the store, like, yeah, like that's crap cow meat. But
Well, you could also make ground hippo meat. So
yeah, which I'm sure
burgers.
is pretty mediocre also still.
Yeah, just like burgers are mediocre.
Yeah,
So
it's just like ground beef. Like ground beef is ground
yeah,
beef.
but when you're cooking a steak, you know how sometimes you have to use some sort of like olive oil or something to make it non-stick to the pan.
I mean, if we're going top notch, you don't have to use that with like Wagyu
Okay. All right. So yeah,
because
if
they're
you
fatty enough that it melts the fat.
you got to compare it to like the highest quality to even try and get it to compete against hippo meat is what you're trying to say right now.
Okay, that's a good shot at me, but I don't know.
All right.
I'm not sold yet.
No worries. We're going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
So the bill was proposed for $250,000 in 1910. So basically, that's $7.18 billion today. And it was introduced by Robert Broussard, who was the Louisiana congressman. He loved this idea because it involved the water hyacinth issue. So back in 1884, they were given as a gift from a Japanese delegate. Ended up being super invasive and clogging up all the waterways. They wouldn't die. They tried killing them. They tried getting rid of them. Nothing was working. But hippos would eat them. Our next big contender in this hippo revolution would be William Newton Irwin. And he was a researcher, and he had experience trying to switch the public's opinion on meats and different like things. One of the things that he was really trying to push was chicken eggs to turkey eggs because they last longer. Irwin was told the best way to solve the meat problem would be to use the land we couldn't use, such as the swamps. So hippos were the natural solution to this. So again, there wasn't enough grazing land, so they were like, well, why don't we just use the swamps? He said that hippos would eat the water hyacinth, which they love it. People don't eat hippos because their neighbors don't eat hippos. Basically saying, if we started making it a mainstream thing, we can make it work. And I'm pretty sure that happened with liver and different parts of animals back in like the 50s.
Yeah, liver became a thing. I have no interest in ever trying liver, but allegedly the narrative is that it's healthy for you, but it's also liver and it doesn't look good.
And I'm sure they could tell you that hippo's healthy for you, and then it probably would have become popular. So Sean,
maybe.
I'm thinking like maybe your argument would be like, hey, why would we import a foreign animal here? Well, Sean, don't worry. Irwin had an answer for that one. Cows, pigs, sheep, and poultry were all also brought over. Just saying. Camels have been brought over in the past, and this is something that was really cool. It was sort of a side tangent that I noticed from a lot of people, is that camels were brought over to help in one of the wars, like in like the desert in the early 1900s, and it was working really well, but people were getting made fun of for riding the camels.
Yeah, it's funny. I can't picture that. Like I can't picture like them being like, damn, like these like horse things with humps on them are really working well for these guys, like, but they look like idiots over there.
Dude, are you kidding me? People make fun of people all the time for like their clothes and like their shoes.
Yeah, but like if you're at like a war or something,
dude, you're just messing
like,
around with like a dude. You're just
these guys are over here killing us, but they look like fucking idiots, man.
Well, it was people on their own side that were making fun of them.
Okay, I thought it was like the other side, like, damn, like, yeah, we're getting our butt kicked, but they look like dumbasses.
That would be unreal, just getting your ass beat by like a camel, and people are like, yo, your camels are ugly.
Yeah, as they're dying, maybe that's like a little bit of a tactic. Like, we got to get them off these things. You got to embarrass them one way or another.
Let's just make fun of these guys until they give up.
Yeah.
So, if you recall, Fitz Duquesne, from earlier, he actually was the next guy that they brought in to help as like sort of another expert in Africa or from Africa. So there's a lot of stuff that's really tricky about this dude because he is kind of a con artist, just to put it kind of lightly. So the dude kept reinventing himself. I think throughout the story, he had maybe like 15 names. So a lot of this, again, is going to be hard to understand whether or not it was true. He lived as a boar, and he ate hippos at a young age. He would collect fat and sell it when he was a kid. So think of Fight Club, when they got the bags of fat. He studied war in Belgium. And then one time during the Boer War, he was captured in prison, dug himself out using a spoon, Shawshank Redemption style, but the tunnel collapsed in on him. Don't worry, he had a second attempt. He escaped by seducing the jailer's daughter. Love
it. Yeah, these two situations, like in one situation, at first I thought like when you first told me this, I thought that like he was in like a cell or something that was like in a public area that like he'd be able to have like passing conversation with people or something where like people could mock him or whatever. But then I was like, in the first scenario, he dug himself out of prison. So he's clearly locked up somewhere that's not easy to get out of. What is the jailer's daughter doing over there? Why is she there? What kind of father is this?
Seduced?
Yeah, what kind of father is this that is like, oh yeah, come spend Saturday afternoon in prison with me? Come on.
Just come on.
This is our daddy-daughter time. Like, come on. No, there are better things to do with your kids and your family than bringing them to work when you work in a prison.
It was bring your daughter to work day, and he had no other option. He was like, well, damn, I guess she's not going to school today. She's going to come in with me.
Yeah.
So another thing that was like a known fact about him was that he hates British. The story was he was told that his uncle, who was like his father figure, was tied up and then murdered by soldiers. The same soldiers then took turns raping his sister. Then they raped his mother and then took her to a prison camp. And when he found her, she was like dying, and she swore. And then he swore on like while she was dying, he was like, "I'll take revenge on the British."
Mm-hmm.
Again, how much of that story do we know is fact? We don't. But after the war, he left and came to America. He eventually hustled himself into the White House and worked as a consultant for Teddy Roosevelt for some of his hunts. And then afterward, he wrote about the president in both a positive and negative light, basically whichever way would make him more money. So in the beginning, people were loving the idea that Teddy Roosevelt was going on the hunt. So he wrote about how great they were. And then people started to turn their view. So then he was like, oh, this guy's trying to pretend that he's a native. But he told them it was totally fine to eat hippos, and because his people did it all the time. Like back in Africa, he was like, yeah, all the time. Totally normal. Burnham and Duquesne were both sent out to Louisiana to help plan some basics. And now we have another character entering, which is Elliot Lord. And he was a New York City writer and inventor who also happened to join this crew. So this dude was sketchier than Duquesne. And the whole time that this was trying to get passed, he kept saying he was writing letters and receiving letters from heads of different organizations on different projects, and how like there was, oh, we're going to get these people, but we need to do this first and we'll talk to them. Burnham, our man, did not trust him. So I do not trust him. And then he was just kept being like, Burnham, you need to get us money first, and then we can get everything rolling. Burnham didn't want to post an idea to his friends until they had an actionable plan, which I think totally makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
Broussard kept getting busy with other things. He was trying to make the World's Fair go to New Orleans. Duquesne, on the meanwhile, he kept writing articles about being a hippo expert and how like great they were, and he kept sending them to everyone. He started to get really pissed though, because he was writing all day long, or so he says, to the point where his hands were like starting to hurt, and then he'd have to switch to a typewriter. So he was going crazy writing, and he wanted payment for what he was doing. And then what really pissed him off is that somebody else, some fisherman in California, was like, oh, the African animal importation idea was mine. So Duquesne just got super pissed because he's been grinding all this time. And then he's calling Burnham. He's like, yo, we got to do something. But Burnham's like, yo, we need a plan first. And then it starts to get a little iffy. Basically, Burnham then gets called to help out in the Mexican Revolutionary War. And then World War I happened where Burnham also helped. Broussard kept waiting to put his plan out again, but eventually it just kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed. Another thing that stopped it was the Department of Agriculture eventually decided industrial farming made more sense than trying to adapt to the environment. So basically what they ended up doing was taking bad, unusable lands and just making them into grazing lands for cows. Irwin then died within a year of the congressional hearing, but his papers were still released. And one was actually on pygmy hippos, which we mentioned earlier. And that was that they'd be easier to control, so they would make for a better option just in case like the big hippo idea didn't get pushed through.
Okay.
Duquesne had some banquets in Washington and New York to showcase some potential imported animals, a bunch of different animals for food, ostriches, hippos, just a bunch of random food from Africa or animals from Africa that he turned to food. But during World War I, when the U.S. teamed up with Britain and not Germany, he got super pissed, and he ended up working with the Germans. So during World War I, Duquesne and Burnham again were on opposite sides. Duquesne then gets arrested for insurance fraud, basically because he had these ideas that he would go film for like the locations that Teddy Roosevelt was going to. And one of the, he got major funding for the films too, but one of the films got blown up, but he was the guy blowing up ships and supply lines during World War I. So he blew up one of his own ships and they caught him. They're like, you're just doing this to make money. But he escaped prison again. Basically,
what a guy.
He faked paralysis, right, in the legs. He pretended he couldn't walk. Every day when he would go to the bathroom, he would vigorously massage his legs to keep the muscles moving. And then eventually he got his chance and he ran away.
So I can't picture that because a long day at work and you sit at the desk all day and you don't get up, and then you get up and you go for a walk or something and you run and your legs are just so tight. That's only like one day of sitting. I can't imagine acting paralyzed.
So have you ever seen Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Yeah.
Remember Uncle Iroh?
Yeah.
Remember when he was in prison, he was pretending to be fat and dying?
Yeah.
But they cutscene.
They would
he's ripped his shit.
Yeah.
That's what I'm picturing this guy was doing. Every day he was like, oh, I can't move. All of a sudden they leave. He's like, oh.
Yeah.
Getting crazy. That's just my guess.
That was awesome. You're right. I can see that. Dropping down, acting paralyzed, knocking out hundreds of body weight squats a day and lunges.
Just got to get through it. Burnham wrote his whole life story down. It's a book called Taking Chances. Eventually, Duquesne was caught again, except this time it was during World War II, and it was because he was running a Nazi spy. Last thing that I want to point out, which is my kind of key takeaway here, is the water hyacinth, Sean, still costing Louisiana $2 million a year. And that's why we should import hippos.
I don't believe when you look at a basic cost analysis of the entire thing, how much we benefit, how much we save versus how much it's going to cost to do it, I don't think it's worth it.
What are you talking about?
$2 million a year is all that it costs Louisiana to maintain these hyacinth things, right?
Yeah. Well, to just to keep them from growing more.
Yeah. Okay. Whatever.
Keep
that's
them
fine.
At bay.
Okay. Fine. So $2 million a year to keep them as is, whatever. Government right now is spending trillions of dollars. So 2 million is absolutely nothing in terms of government money. That's like forgotten about money. That's like, oh, you only skimmed 2 million off the top of that bill for yourself? Come on, man. Like, why are you even in Congress?
All right, but
Yeah.
if we could deal with that extra $2 million, think of where that could go, Sean. And
I'm not seeing where it could go, but that's not even what?
Import the hippos. Import the hippos. Simple problem solved.
So when looking at this, so there are a couple like pricing, and it's tough to find real pricing, but there was a zoo cost that put out like how much it costs them to transport a hippo. It's around $5,000 just for them to transport it to the United States. And that's not feeding, which feeding is covered in this situation, but that's not anything other than transporting. But that also wouldn't include the purchasing, because if we're talking like private farmers, there's not really a price to go off of other than the pygmy hippo price, because people have them as pets. And the going price for that is $100,000.
All right, Sean. But there's this little issue going on in Colombia right now, which actually I feel like is probably my biggest win. And that would be Pablo Escobar's hippos. Now, everybody that's listening, if you know nothing, you're about to go on a ride. Pablo Escobar had basically his own mini zoo in like where he lived. And once he got like arrested or killed by the government, they took all of his everything. They started putting other animals into zoos, but they left the hippos. There were 4 hippos, 1 guy and 3 girl hippos. And today there are about 50.
So I would say that's an awesome idea to do something with those hippos.
And I mean, so they're about 50, and Pablo Escobar died in 1993. So that's pretty fast reproduction. And fun fact, the hippos are actually reproducing way quicker there, which means in the United States, they would probably also reproduce quicker because of the plentiful food and great living conditions. So if we can take some of those hippos, bring them to Louisiana, they'll eat the water hyacinths, they'll breed like wild animals, and they'll breed quicker, 2 years instead of those 7. And boom, we are cooking.
Well, 7 just isn't manageable. If 7 is the only number you have to work with, there's no shot.
No way.
Speaking like of which, cows, go ahead.
Escobar's, the reason why people have like also thought about his food is Pablo Escobar's, one of them tried like electric fencing, didn't work. The hippo got shocked and died by accident, but the locals just came and ate the hippo.
Jeez. Free food. Look at this. Yeah, why
not?
Oh,
this is sweet. All right. So yeah.
2 years is a maybe, but there'd have to be so much more than 50.
Bro, they reproduce like wild animals there.
Yeah, but in almost 30 years, they go from 4 to 50. That's not huge.
Trying to breed them.
Yeah, but it isn't the idea to like just kind of let them go in like a contained swamp area in Louisiana.
At first, yes, Sean, but there's money to be made here. All right. Let's think about it. You could also sell the ivory tusks and potentially their skin because it's bulletproof. It's 2 inches thick.
I do think potentially their skin, but I don't agree with the ivory because the ivory, people want the ivory because they can't have elephant ivory. But then if we start breeding hippos, it's going to flood the market, and it would be like at first it's like think about like cars, like everyone wants a Ferrari or something. So, but they're like, they want them because they're scarce. If all of a sudden in 10 years, there's a Ferrari everywhere you go and every other guy you know has one, like nobody's going to care.
Great. We'll stop poaching in Africa then. It'll be great. Everybody wins. Less poaching going on if we can provide them. Look at that, Sean. We just solved a poaching problem.
But it doesn't fix the. It solves the poaching problem, but you can't profit off the ivory.
We'll profit in the beginning. We'll make a ton of money until people start to realize that we're hurting them. And then they'll be like, all right, these people are ranching hardcore. So hippos eat about 80 pounds of grass a day. I believe cows eat up to 50. So I'm saying that's close enough. We get a lot more meat out of a hippo.
I'm being nice right now. I'll say it's close enough.
All right. So the one thing we did mention that would be a serious issue, which you had mentioned, is a little bit about their hydration, right?
Yeah, like I don't know how much water they need to drink, but you said they live in the water because they just got to be wet all the time.
Yeah, they got to be wet all the time. They do create this thing called blood sweat because doctors, I don't know who doctors, people that were studying them originally thought that they were bleeding out of all their pores, but it's actually like a layer of mucus that it's like sort of a natural sunscreen that protects them from infection. So even when they get wounds, like if they're attacked by an animal or something like that, or the water's gross and filthy, they don't actually get sick from it. While we're talking about getting attacked by other animals, they have no natural predators. So, they're going to be thriving in their habitats because basically they can mess up anybody's day. Like if a crocodile attacks them, they're like, not today, sir. So blood sweat, pretty cool stuff.
That does create the problem, though, of once it gets big enough to where they're not just free ranging in the swampland and they've got to be more like modernize the farms, like you're just constantly going to have hoses going.
Yeah, but think about like it'll be like a light spray, like a little and then they'll get their little blood sweat going and everybody wins. Just a little mystery.
I get it. It's just it's going to be a lot.
Yeah.
And hey, man, I don't know how much, but
success isn't cheap. All right.
But when we're looking at a decision that's about money, you got to take into account.
I think there's plenty of money to be made here. What else is there? Oh, so people consider them dangerous, right? They're wrong, all right?
Colin doesn't consider them dangerous. That's
bro. We're gonna breed that out. We're breeding that out. All right.
You could probably do that. I don't know if any of them have ever been tamed.
Nobody's tried, man. I'm 100% sure someone somewhere, probably in South Africa, where there are a lot of hippos. Someone has probably raised a hippo from birth, and they're probably super friendly. We're breeding that out, Sean.
Okay.
Yeah, they kill 500 people a year. Dogs kill 25,000 people a year. Just saying.
Okay. I think cows are friendly.
Cows, maybe because they were bred that way, Sean. I think the original bull probably wasn't super friendly. And you know what? They said, let's export them to America, breed them to be friendly, and then eat them. Sound like anybody else's plan?
I'm just saying we got one that's going pretty well right now.
All right. I'm just saying we'd add to it. It would be more of a supplement, right? So instead of having this, cows only, it'd be more of like, you know how when you live by the coast, you eat fish?
Yeah.
It'd be the same kind of idea. If you live near the south, you eat hippo. Or you get better, fresher hippo.
Yeah, this is the only hippo incorporation of just like incorporation of the meat into our society that I can get behind.
Yeah, if we're trying to push it as the main food source, which I think it should be, but it would be a little bit harder. It would be we'd have to do we'd basically have to reshape the entire country, which I don't think is feasible at this moment. But it would be a good source of food.
Also, like, what do you do with all the cows? Like,
eat them.
I guess you just don't let them. You just don't breed them again.
Yeah, you would just
And
lower.
you eat them until they're gone if we were replacing them, but I guess it would be like a phase out type thing.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah,
Sean, go
I
ahead.
don't think that's doable.
I
What?
know you have one counterpoint that you wanted to bring up about the waterways.
What am I Oh, how they poop and how they
Yeah,
kill the fish because their
yeah.
poop sucks the oxygen out of the water. I forgot about that one.
The poop is their big downfall, but the water hyacinth is already doing that job first off. And then second off, Sean, you know
Hmm.
what else is causing the problem?
What?
Runoff from cattle farms.
Mm,
Oh yeah. So all that
okay.
cattle, the cows that you love so much are causing the same issues.
Yeah, and I don't like. I did see one thing where there are like types of animals that like ecosystems or whatever that are
Yeah.
surviving because of the hippo poop, but like there's a lot of fish that just aren't doing well in those areas.
I'm sure they're probably also not doing well from cow runoff. Because cow
They
poop
might
is
not be.
they might
They
not.
what? They
I said
might not be, but we just gotta. Cows don't need to live in wetlands areas,
that is that is true.
so there's a big difference there. Like these guys got to be literally in the water where other fish are. I don't think there's a lot of swamp fish that we eat, but we're talking like Louisiana type area, like that's gonna flow into the Gulf of Mexico, and there's a lot of fish down that way that we probably eat.
It's true, but we have
Yeah.
a water hyacinth problem right now that's making the land uninhabitable anyway.
Hmm.
We got to take care of that. Fun fact about their poop: as they poop, they do like a propeller type thing with their tail, and they just shoot it everywhere. Because I mean, come on, it's got to
Because
be hilarious.
it's just kill as many fish in every direction as possible. That's why.
No way, man. No way.
I
Um,
will say that cows do not aim or have any special facts to do with the way that they poop.
so what you're trying to say is they are not a superior form of food because they are not as cool.
I'm saying the way that they poop is not as exciting.
Can cows store 2 days worth of food inside of them and last up to 3 weeks without eating? Or is that just hippos?
That might just be hippos. I don't know if anybody is starving any cattle to see how long they can go, but I don't think they're storing food in them like that.
All I'm saying is, man, they seem pretty ideal as an option for food. I mean, a guy in Congo paid $5 for hippo meat, was able to last 3 to 4 days off of that food.
What?
Yeah. Um,
Obviously, the prices wouldn't be that here, but if somebody was like $5 for almost a week worth of hippo meat, I'd be like, yeah, I'll take it.
bet
Here's
I'm
10.
in. So you mentioned the price here.
Mm.
It is illegal in the United States. Otherwise, me and you would be eating hippo steak right now and
Oh,
having
yeah.
a very long discussion about how much better it is than steak.
Well, I would have both in front of me. I would have a regular steak and a hippo steak.
And hippo would taste better. Um,
We don't know that, but one day we will have to leave the country to go to Africa and taste it.
I don't even think it's legal there. I'm pretty sure.
Oh my God. It probably isn't because they're endangered, actually.
Well, they're in danger of being endangered. They're not endangered yet.
Oh.
They're at risk of being endangered. Which is why
That's a weird category.
yeah. But basically it's if animals could be at risk. So if their habitats are getting destroyed, basically I pulled up a fact. I think it was in Congo during like before the war, they had I think 1,800 hippos, and now they're down to like oh no, they had 30,000 hippos in Congo in 1974, and now there are only 800
Hmm.
because people are eating them, Sean, because they're delicious.
Wait, so Are they not reproducing fast enough to keep up with the hungry population?
I guess people just realize how good they are, and you can make money off of their teeth. And they're like, well, let me just eat some hippos because this is the best way to do it. All right. Final conclusion, Sean.
Yes.
Pro hippo?
No.
Pro beef?
Pro beef.
All right. Any sort of way you'd be willing, like if this is your future, right? You're in control. Do you do anything with hippos or
no? I would make it like a regional thing. I'd have to get Africa to be okay, and like start introducing it into the culture though.
All right.
Like I'd want to see some farming going on over there and like see them making it work. Or I really like your idea of just like offering to go like pick up the Colombians' hippos and like start doing shit with that.
That's how I would do it. I say, don't worry about it, Colombia. We'll take a few of them off your hands because the locals get pissed if someone tries to kill their hippos. They're like, yo, these are our like mascots. We love them.
Yeah, I could see that being a problem though, taking those. But I think that's the best idea. You get a bunch of free hippos from Colombia, bring them up here, and then you just make it like a regional thing, or like some like I don't know, like a fancy type dish that's only in Louisiana in the swamp areas.
I think it would be the best, and I think it caused tourism, right? Because people would be like, "Oh, I got to go travel to try this exotic meat."
Yeah, only can get it there. I don't know what else is kind of like that. I guess like Wagyu steak in Japan, you know?
Yeah. So,
or like fancy tuna or something you get in Japan, like at a marketplace, you know?
I'd say it's definitely worth maybe the United States taking a second look at that bill from 1910.
Yeah. Regional food, though, is all I could do. It'll never replace the cow. And I think the cow is an overall better option to feed a nation.
Regional food is the warm-up. That's the way I look at it. We start at regional, and then eventually we grow from there. But we'll be farming hippos soon enough. That was my rancher voice. Hence my outfit.
Very appropriate outfit. It was too hot today for me to do a flannel. I couldn't do it.
I'm dripping sweat, but I'll do it for the hippos, man. All right, Sean,
guys.
Do you wanna tell our fans what the next episode is?
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about the lifestyle and just absurdity also, and what goes into ultra marathon running. There's a lot going on with that type of thing, but basically normal marathon 26 miles, ultra marathon 50, 100 miles plus.
It's gonna be a fun one, guys. It's gonna be a fun one.
Colin and I both ran in high school and college, so I feel like this is just, I don't know, running's a big part of our life. This is a crazy running situation and story and group of people. And yeah, it's going to be a good one.
So guys, that's what you should know about hippos. Again, if you want any fun hippo stories, American Hippopotamus or River of Teeth is a alternate history book, and there's a sequel to that as well.
Oh my God.
I read both of those. Fantastic. But cheers.
Cheers.
And that's what you should know about American hippopotamus ranching.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Email us at thewyskpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you, guys.
I'll put it in the description.
Cheers.
Break.